Welcome to the Oxygen Podcast. Over the next 20 minutes, dive into the world of business with tips, tricks, and success stories straight from the trenches. Our guests bring real world advice and tools that serve as their oxygen on their journey. Get ready for a breath of fresh air on this episode of the Oxygen Podcast. Hey, Oxygen. Okay, today is going to be an amazing conversation. A, because I love having female entrepreneurs on this podcast, and B, because I just know that when we bring entrepreneurs to you who have a great story, everyone benefits. So with that being said, let me introduce you to Kelly McKnight from KMG Marketing Team. Welcome to the Oxygen Podcast.
Thank you so much, Kat. It's such a pleasure to be here. I'm super excited to be able to share some of the story and some of the history and the background behind how we got started over here with the KMG marketing team. That is also the home of Piggy Prints. We can see our little pink pig behind us here and all of our little pink branding that we have going on.
I am so excited to ask you some questions about that. So, all right, well, let's jump right in because I think this 35 minutes is going to go incredibly fast. So, give us kind of your 1 minute intro or your elevator pitch. Tell us about you and what we should know about you.
Absolutely. So I actually came from extremely large corporate. I've worked for companies like General Nutrition Centers. I was their youngest and very first female director back in the day, director of marketing to be specific. So that's mostly my background, strategic marketing and growing organizations. I've worked for other companies that were public medical device organizations and naturopathic and pharmaceutical organizations, ad agencies, and that type of thing. Most recently, I was running a public medical device ophthalmic organization that was located down here in the Tampa Bay area. I was there for about 14 years and built out the entire organization from the ground floor up. That's what part of my specialty is. I would get hired to go into large organizations for 4 to 5 years. They would have ideas, financing, maybe technology, and they just didn't really know what to do with it. And I would come in and build out all of their core competencies, their vision statements, value statements, propositions, go-to-market strategies, and then start to build out their branding, sales teams, marketing consultation, education, all the way up through quality assurance and so on and so forth. So I have a pretty good diverse background. Ultimately, my last organization that I was with was acquired in 2015. And as I was becoming the CEO of that organization, I had been there for 14 years. They sent me to Harvard in the process for continuing education for becoming a CEO for negotiation and leadership. And I wound up going to Kellogg, pardon me, their School of Management at Northwestern for mergers and acquisitions and finance. So in 2015, after going through a rough year of an acquisition, we were acquired for 17 times EBITDA. If those of you that know about EBITDA, 17 times EBITDA is a very difficult thing to achieve. We were able to do that. I was very blessed and fortunate, to have that. But through that year, as my company, my baby, because I didn't have children of my own, that company was really my baby, was being acquired. My mother died, my grandmother died, and I had, and this is a very long elevator speech, everybody, I know, but just giving you a little bit of a platform. This is like the longest elevator speech ever on the planet. So I had the blessed opportunity really of being with my mother for the last 7 years of her, I'm sorry, 7 days of her life. We had a lot of dysfunction, as a lot of people do in their lives. And I committed to her to take care of her in the last couple of years of her life. And so she was a mom that didn't really take care of me. So if you ever want to learn more than you could ever possibly learn in your entire life, take care of somebody in the last few years of their lives that never took care of
Yeah.
you.
Sure.
I had 7 days in hospice with her. And why did I buy a company, and why did I start my own company, and why did I branch out on my own and walk away from a big, fat, hairy paycheck, stock options, and all of the rest of it that came along with being a corporate officer and a CEO of a public company? The last 2 days of my mom's life, the hospice people kept coming in and out. And one of the things that they kept reiterating to me was, it's not ever what people did do in their lives on the last couple of days of their lives that they regret. It's always what they never took the opportunity and what they never decided to do in their lives that they regretted the most. And so, in those 2 days, while being acquired and going through everything that I was going through in that time period and watching my company go away, kind of watching my baby die, I made a decision pretty much right then and there that I was going to get out of big corporate and I was going to start my own organization. So on December 15th of 2015, I walked out of the doors of my big public corporate company, and I could have stayed, but I can't work with or work for people that make my skin crawl, because I have a conscience and it doesn't matter how much money is there, and there was a lot of it. Can't do it. And so I walked away on December 15th of 2015 and walked into a new office space that happened to be a commercial print organization, which we'll talk a little bit more, I'm sure, about that. Don't ever do that. Don't ever buy a commercial print organization. Don't do that. It's a big mistake. Don't do that. So yeah, I walked out of my big corporate office and walked into this factory the next day. And um, KMG Marketing Team, that's the company that I own, is a full service marketing organization that owns Piggy Prints. There's the pig, that owns Piggy Prints, which is a full service commercial printing organization. And so we are a full service marketing shop, and we also offer high level consulting to some pretty large organizations at a C level. So we're pretty diverse, and we're still here, still kicking and still alive. And once again, longest elevator speech anyone's ever heard. There you go.
I love that. Okay, so what do you think, I'm just gonna start asking you some questions because I think that there's so much in all of the that you have been through. What do you think is the hardest thing, or maybe the most surprising thing that you learned in the trenches of business, rather than what they tout that you're going to learn in business school that really is not applicable? Like, what's the one thing that is a in the trenches lesson that most business owners need?
I think the in the trenches, when you make that decision, and it's a very courageous decision, because entrepreneurship is not for the light of or faint of heart. Um, the number one thing that you have to learn is that everybody gets paid before you do, right?
Yeah.
And the more successful you get, sometimes the harder it gets. Because not everybody is always happy for your success, and not everybody is very supportive of your success. And so it's been a humbling and interesting experience, to, you know, go through this process, and I've always had the weight of all the employees' livelihoods on my shoulders, but when it's other people's money, it's a whole different thing. And when it's all your money and you have a tremendous amount of overhead, i.e. burn rate, right? That's what
Yeah.
it costs to keep the lights on and everything going. Um, get your facts, right? Make sure that you know your numbers. Make sure that you understand, especially if you're acquiring something else or whatever it is, you definitely want to make sure that you've got your plan in place. And things never happen the way you expect them to happen, and pretty much not ever. And you don't get the opportunity to control or really choose anything. I think my biggest thing is I thought when I bought my own company, when I was going to start my own company, I thought I would have more freedom, than I ever did. And it's the exact opposite. I know, and you're
Yeah,
laughing,
for sure.
it's the
Yeah.
exact opposite. It's
Yeah.
it's not that way at all. It's
Well, that's
it's
interesting because I think you mentioned a couple of things along the journey there that really lead to having a level of emotional intelligence, which I speak to pretty frequently, that kind of primes you to be ready for a couple of these big hits. But, if you aren't on that path and you keep a very intellectual approach to some of these problems, it might suck you in, like the situations with your mother, big emotional hits that you take maybe earlier in life. They really kind of set you on your feet and say, okay, maybe I need a different approach. And while a lot of people don't realize that those scenarios happen to us for a reason, I think in entrepreneurism, they're almost necessary life lessons that cause you to say, okay, maybe I need a minute. And by the way, I can look at this in a different way. Would you agree?
absolutely positively. I absolutely, there are reset buttons and reset times in everybody's lives. I think whenever anybody's going through a major transition, and for some people that might be a divorce, that might be the loss of a loved one, right? Like it was for me. It might be overcoming some sort of trauma. Maybe it's a car accident, whatever it is. Everybody's got a pivotal moment in their life that caused them, especially as we get to certain ages, that created change in your mind, whether it made you aware of the fact that it was time for you to move on to a new position, while you're working for other people. Um, maybe it's a change in um, relationships, personal relationships, right? Whatever it happens to be, absolutely. Everything that's happened to you in the past matters, and everything that has happened to you in the past, all of those good experiences and all of those bad experiences and everything in between is is part of what's created who you are today, and it's part of what is your makeup today,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Um,
I
I
think especially when it's support services like marketing or like, even just supporting another entrepreneur, I think that those are so undervalued when it comes to business and how we show up, that it's it should be something that gets talked about in business school. It should be something that gets talked about in entrepreneur communities. And I mean, we talk about them here, but we know we're the minority in that type of conversation. And as I listen to you uh, in your 30-second pitch, it's so integral, and that's why we want people to talk about it, because it is the journey that makes you a good entrepreneur.
absolutely. You
Yeah.
you don't get there without the journey, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
And again, this isn't for the faint of heart. If it was easy, everybody would be doing it.
One of my
And
favorite lines ever.
yes, if it was easy, then everybody would be doing it. And
Yeah.
it just, it is what it is. And I think a lot of times people think whether, again, you're still on a big paycheck, right? And you're working for
Yeah.
another organization and you're in a C level, um, you're the man or the woman, right? In our case.
Yeah.
People think that's an easy thing. It's not. It's uh it's a whole journey. And
It ages my soul. I don't know about you, but being a business owner, it ages my soul very, very years, decades more than I
yep.
probably want to admit. Okay, so let me ask you this: what is the hardest part, do you think, of remaining agile? Like you made comment a little while ago about stepping into a print organization and making the decision consciously to purchase that. Obviously, we're almost 10 years past that decision in your life, and post COVID, you are a business owner who survived a global pandemic, which I always say to people, like, do you realize that there aren't a lot of people who can say that? So that in and of itself is an achievement. We've got social media, which is an ever moving beast. What do you think is the hardest part, especially in marketing, about remaining agile, remaining on the top of your game? What do you think that is, especially because you're consulting with other companies? So what does that message sound like from you?
That's such a great question. It really is. Remaining agile in this day and age, from a marketing standpoint, especially, um, means, and in order to survive, right? And not just after COVID, then we had supply chain issues, and I mean, inflation, and right? We're all being hit with all this stuff all at the same time. The only way to continue to survive is to continue to diversify your business. The only way to survive, especially in today's digital age and era, right, as we're starting to see the introduction of artificial intelligence, and what does that mean for organizations and industries as a whole? I think in order for us to continue to keep up, we're continuing to try to expand upon and diversify ourselves more so into the digital spaces. And we do utilize artificial intelligence here in the organization every single day. We're trying to get more nimble and, to your point, exactly more agile with that. We're trying to get people to be early adopters of that. For us, from a marketing standpoint, it's great to utilize AI for content, right, development. And so it's been super helpful from that standpoint. But we have a long way to go, and there's so much that this sector is so saturated, right? There's so much competition and marketing and any type of marketing, really,
Yeah.
but it's the same reason why we just continuously diversify ourselves. In a way, it's the only way to survive. And if you're not constantly changing, you're dying. If you're not
Yeah.
constantly thriving, changing, diversifying, thinking of what's next, and trying to stay on top of technology and trying to stay on top of, um, you know, what's relevant to your clients, you're not going to survive. And
Yeah.
so that's, I mean, that's survival 101. You've got to, listen to your clients, and then you've got to continue to be able to um, keep an open mind, to whatever's coming down the pike. Because, yeah, you can get really fat and happy, for a while and get comfortable. And again, to your point, Kat, whoever saw a global pandemic, right, coming, none of us ever saw that coming. And there's not a single person on the planet Earth now that can't say that they haven't survived trauma, right?
Yeah.
Because everybody on the planet Earth has gone through COVID that's still on the earth, right?
Yeah.
So,
Right. Right.
I know my answers are long. Sorry about that, but
No, you're doing great. You're doing great.
that's
I think
survival.
I think it's interesting to have this perspective for those of us who have a business that requires marketing, which in all fairness is the majority of businesses. Like there's a lot of startups that are trying to struggle with maybe doing it on their own, or just have a conversation with a similar business owner and maybe piece it together. But these are the topics that really fuel your business. How are you marketing yourself so that someone spends money and buys your product? That is the fuel. We say here it's the oxygen that makes your business breathe. And so these conversations are what kind of people cha-cha around. Where are they going to put their marketing spend? Who are they going to consult when it comes time? Where are the dollars going to finally go? And I think you and I were having a conversation recently just about finding someone that will come in and really have that conversation with them. And I think what's really unique about the way I've watched you converse, since we've met, is your willingness to say, hey, by the way, I'm not your girl, right? Like, I'm not the one that is the right fit for you, but let's find somebody who can help you. And I
Right.
think that that's one of the things that makes you incredibly unique. I mean, obviously there's the variety of offerings that you can provide, but then that ability to say, not me, not now, maybe someday, but not now. And I think there's a lot of people that can't say that they're willing to do that. And maybe that's what makes you a little more unique than others.
Thank you for that. I really appreciate it. It goes back to what I said a little bit earlier that and it has everything to do with credibility for me. It has
Yeah.
everything to do with, again, I I have to be able to lay my head on my pillow at night, right? And so we could say yes to everything, but I'll never say yes to anything that I don't think that we can execute absolutely excellently. And I am dead serious about that. So um, that is part of my background. That is part of my makeup. I mean, it's just part of my DNA, basically.
Yeah.
I've not ever been able to, and to some degree, this made me remarkably successful, even in big corporate, was my transparency and my honesty. But also at times made me extremely controversial, controversial, right? Or you know, I would get labeled as different things, difficult to deal with. The things like if I were a guy, they would be like, oh, he's a rock star, he's
Right.
um, but it's just always been a part of my DNA. I'm not a person to tell people that I'm a subject matter expert or that I can, do something that I can't do.
Yeah.
It's not going to help the business
Right.
ultimately. Even when we're having, because we all have good and bad months, even when we're having bad months and we need the money, quite frankly, right?
Right. Right.
We're hustling, we're all hustling for the same exact dollar. Um, I'd love to say yes, but I won't
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah. Well, I think it speaks volumes to the success that you've been able to produce. Then, if you want to go far, then go together, and clearly your results are showing that. What do you think? I always like to ask all of my guests, what do you think you need next? As entrepreneurs, a lot of times we have a long list of things that we need to do. Our to-do list is overflowing. If you're like me, it's on 50 million sticky notes in my phone, on my notebook, all the things. But if you had to know and name the one thing you needed next, what would it be?
I would I would really, as we're continuing to diversify our organization into the digital, right, and embracing the artificial intelligence, um, you know, it human resources are the most difficult. thing, right, to find right now. And so I am looking for a couple of human resources that could help us out from that standpoint, no doubt.
Yeah.
Might as well
Yeah.
put that out there for anybody
Yeah.
that's listening. But on a personal note, what do I need to start to work on a little bit more as an entrepreneur and as a business owner? What I need to work on a little bit more is me. And what I need to work on a little bit more is a little bit more self-care and a little bit more peace, meditation, but whatever it might be. I think I've been going so hard and I've been going so strong for such a long period of time. Um, that, my biggest challenge right now, my days are 12 and 14-hour days. And that hustle hasn't stopped. Yesterday started at 6:30 and it ended at a great big CEO council event I had last night until like 10:30 or 11 o'clock last night. And then I had an 8 o'clock this morning, so I have to start to learn how to do a little bit more self-care, because if we're not really taking good care of ourselves, right, then we can't continue to stay as focused and as driven as we need to be. So
Yeah, the
that's
reality
my
of
answer.
as goes the leader, so goes the team. And then we look down and our team is grinding a little bit too hard and we're like, hey, I need a vacation day. And you're like, oh yeah, I haven't had one
Exactly.
either. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
need a break from me too. I'm just being honest, right? So like
For sure.
sometimes your people need a break from you too, and your people are your best asset.
Yeah, for sure. I love that. And you are not the only CEO who's ever said that on this podcast. So you are in good company, my friend. All right. So my understanding is it's May. Like, how crazy is that? Tell this audience a little bit about how they can interact with you and what you are offering to them in the month of May.
Absolutely. I would love to give everybody the opportunity to the first 5 people that would like to reach out to us. I would love to offer a free consultation session. And we can go through all of the products and all of the offerings that we have, along with some of our consultation services. I would love to go into quite a bit more detail about that. You can reach me directly at kelly.mcknight, MCKNIGHT, at kmgmarketingteam.com. Or you can reach out to us on our direct line numbers at 727-376-7200. Or reach out to me on LinkedIn.
I love
And
this.
that would be great too. So I would love to hear from all of you or any of you at any time. I'd love to answer your questions and interact and learn more about, what's your story and how are you going to get to 3 million?
Well, I will make sure that all of that contact information ends up in the notes. And I hope that more than 5 people are begging for your time because you have so much wisdom to pass on. I really appreciate you being willing to talk about all the vulnerable spots about your journey. And you are an asset to this community. So I really appreciate you. We tell everybody here to take just a little bit of time to breathe life in. We'll see everybody next time.